Every parent wants to be able to provide their children with the tools they need to succeed in all aspects of life. Author and former U.S. Marine Eric Rittmeyer is an expert in the field of mental toughness and emotional intelligence. He joins us now with how and why it's important to teach our kids emotional intelligence skills. Eric, let's begin by talking about what exactly is EQ and how does it differ from IQ?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about that. For the longest time, people thought you went to school, you memorize, you regurgitate. The smartest people with the highest IQs get the best jobs, they're the most successful. But then back in the 1990s, there was this other concept that came about that was like, wait a second, just because you're smart, book smart, doesn't mean you're going to be able to lead, doesn't mean you're going to be able to connect. It's where emotional intelligence came from. EQ is just how we perceive, express, and respond to our emotions. We receive no training on this, which is what the problem is.
And so why do you feel it's so important that schools start teaching basic emotional intelligence skills to our children?
Yeah, our kids aren't taught any type of emotional vocabulary, Mike, and the problem is they go through school, they get thrown out into the workforce, and they're confronted with someone who has a conflicting point of view or they say something mean to them. They don't know how to express those emotions other than anger and violence. We have to teach them a vocabulary that they can go to that says, okay, when you feel this way, this is how we respond to it. We can't react, we have to respond. We need to teach our kids that.
And so how do we know what our kids are thinking right now, especially with all of the uncertainty due to the shutdown and the pandemic, if you will?
Yeah, it all starts with communicating with them. Our kids are incredible emotional detectives. They know what's going on. They can read us like a book. So it's all about having open communication with them and getting them to understand, look, how you're feeling right now is okay. Feelings are 100% okay. It's how we react to those feelings that's important. We have to show them a way to say, okay, let's take this anger, fear, whatever it is, and let's find a way to work through it and express it in a way that we're not going to upset somebody else.
And let's talk about the age a kid has to be in order to really understand this. What do you think the youngest is?
Well, there's really no young age, I don't think, Mike, but it's all about talking on their level of mental capacity. We all have different levels of comprehension, so we're not going to have a conversation with our 5-year-old the same way we would with our 15-year-old, but it's not talking above their level and just having open-ended conversation. And again, it's lead by example. It's what I learned in the Marine Corps. You lead by example. They're going to follow what we do.
And what is self-awareness, and why do our kids need to understand it?
Self-awareness is about understanding and analyzing our own thoughts and what we do and what we say. It's knowing that they have impacts. Our words have impacts on other people. Our kids aren't taught that. So we're growing up in this age right now of social media instead of social interaction. They're not taught basic communication skills. So the awareness piece is knowing and realizing and comprehending the fact that what they say and what they do, it has impacts on other people. So they have to be very aware of what they're doing and what they're saying.
Without question. Now, you have a new ebook, and it can help with this. Where can people download it, and but more importantly, what can they learn from it?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So the ebook is Maximizing Your Emotional Intelligence. It's on my website. It's mentaltoughness.speaker.com. It's a free download. The form will pop up. It's just about understanding emotional intelligence. There are still lots of people that don't understand it, and what it boils down to is just emotional control. It's just having total control of our emotions at all time. Our nation right now, unfortunately, has become incapable of controlling emotion. There's no logical thought happening anymore.
And that's a very good point. And I think in this day and age, you don't necessarily have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, let's talk about emotional intelligence. You really have to think outside the box in order to kind of dive into this educational aspect of life. How would you share this with somebody that's never heard of it before?
Well, I think it all starts with taking control and understanding and learning to accept an opposing point of view. That's where everything starts. And that's the biggest issue we're having right now in this nation. We're incapable of accepting an opposing point of view. All we really want to feel like is that we're being heard. People don't have to agree with us. Our nation's horrible at listening. We're just listening long enough with the intent to reply, not with the intent to understand. We have to get better listeners, especially us guys, Mike. We're not good at that listening part.
Yeah, and you nailed it, really. Obviously we're talking about kids here, but on a national level, from a political standpoint in Washington, D.C., you're right. People just are not, if you don't agree with them, well, that's a problem, and it's not okay to disagree lately. At least that's the direction we seem to be going.
And again, going back to the kids, is they're not taught those basic skills. So again, it's memorize, regurgitate. There's no skill that's taught to say, okay, when you have somebody that upsets you, this is how you respond to it. They're relying on social media. They're not learning these skills of face-to-face, having confrontation, being upset with somebody. They're not getting those basic skills. So then what ends up happening is, again, they respond to these things emotionally.
Right.
When they do that, it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's going to create major problems.
Exactly. Eric, thank you so much for your time.
Mike, thanks for having me.
You bet. And for more information, go to mentaltoughnesspeaker.com. And now it's time for our community call.